welcome to our 7th Co-op Women's Voices event and this time it's with the very brilliant Ana Aguirre. I'm just going to give a bit of a background because some of you may not know about Women's Voices. So it's a joint project between the college and Co-op News, and we're over a 12-month period, we're in a series of conversations with women in the cooperative movement in the UK and internationally. The overarching objective is to raise the profiles of women's voice across the cooperative movement and to engage in rich and creative discussions on issues that are important to women in the movement and beyond. So these women will be role models for other women, so that's why we've chosen them. And so it's important to know the sources of their lives and the journeys and passions. And what this Women's Voices series does, it follows on from the Cooperative Women's Challenge, which was launched in 2010 through the Cooperative Group. And that was designed to empower women working in the cooperative movement, asking how can women support each other, how can they build the confidence, and how can we ensure just a healthy work-life balance. That was one of the kind of main focuses of the Women's Challenge. And it follows also on from a series of Cooperative Women's Voices face-to-face events that me and Bex also ran in 2017. So we had a big event in Manchester in 2017, and then we had an event in Lichfield as well. So as I said before, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ana Aguirre. So Ana is the Vice President of the ICA Youth Network, and she's also co-founder of, and apologies Ana if I mispronounce this, Tazebaez, which is a worker cooperative in the Basque Country, and also a member and a founding member of the Travelling University. And these she's going to bring out when Bex talks with her. So Ana grew up in the Basque Country and also Portugal. Has lived in the US, in Maryland and India, and speaks Basque, Spanish, Portuguese and English, with also a very little bit of Chinese and Hindi as well. So if you want to challenge her, you can. And yeah, just some basic house rules before, because Bex this time is going to lead. So we take it in turns. And this time it's Bex is going to lead on the conversation with Ana today, and I'm just going to field some questions. So the basic housekeeping is any question, keep yourself on mute while the conversation is happening, put any questions in the comments, I'll field that, and then towards the end we will also kind of open it up to more open questions. So over to you, Bex, and welcome Ana. It's an absolute delight.
Thanks, Sarah, and hi Ana. First of all, how are you doing? How is everything?
Hello everyone. Please do not challenge me on my Hindi. It's very rusty. It was very bad at the time and now it's very rusty. All good.
Oh, we're delighted you can join us today. So thank you very, very much, Ana. So I guess to get the ball rolling, to get the conversation started, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What started on your cooperative journey? How did you first hear about co-ops?
So I'm Ana, and I am from the Basque Country, and it may be one of the most cooperativized territories in the world, right? So we are a 2.1 million people territory, and it has well over 2,400 co-ops, which is a lot, and also home to Mondragon, which is just like the world-known one. But you know, it's important to say that we have a lot more than Mondragon. And how I came to know about co-ops was through university, consciously through university. Although my dad is part of the Cooperative Bank of Mondragon, or used to before he retired, right? Because he's not retired. But so I knew about co-ops before. I just didn't know that I knew.
That does seem to be like an overarching theme of a lot of the women that we've spoken to, that co-ops are a thing, but also that they don't know actually what it means to be part of the cooperative, to be a member, to actually be part of that democratic process. And that's really interesting. Let's start talking about like when you grew up. I mean, Sarah already mentioned that you spent time in Portugal and the USA, and speaking to you before this event, from ages 14 to 18, they sounded pretty formative, Ana. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to say that I lived abroad, because it may have been the moment that I grew the most. I was 14 when my parents decided to live to Portugal, and that was actually my first encounter with co-ops, because my dad was part of the bank, and then one of the co-ops in Mondragon that they do this solidarity of directors. He went to another co-op, right, to Ulma Construction, and that's when my whole family decided to move And so we went somewhere else. It was the first time that I took a plane in my life. So it was like, oh my God, you know, I'm taking a plane for the first time to move for like, at the beginning it was 5 years. It ended up being just 2. But it was the moment where I actually realized that the world was bigger than my very little city, because I live in a 150,000 people city. So yeah, it was bigger than that, and there were more people, and it was probably the first time that, you know, also you face the moment where you need to make new friends, learn a language that you don't know anything about. Although Portuguese seems easy and close to Spanish, it's easy to read but hard to get. And so there are very little things that change a kid's life in a way. And then I was so good outside. It was so fun for me to live abroad that I'm a sailor. So whoever of you that lived in Portugal has visited and will know that Cascais, that is where I lived, is one of the top spots to sail in the world. So I obviously didn't want to leave. And then my parents decided to move back early. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm coming back. You know, now I know paradise. What am I going to do? Going back to my home? Like, there's no way I'm moving back. So I hated English back at the time. You know, you wouldn't say now because I am quite fluent, but I couldn't understand anything. So when people said, how are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. And Rebecca and Sarah had a lot of fun with this yesterday. But for me, you know, you spend your whole time learning English from the UK, and that's how are you? So doing was an addition that I didn't understand at that moment. So I went to the US. That was my desperation. I don't want to leave. So whatever works. And I ended up in Maryland. Very cool family, very huge school. I came from a school of 300 and something people, and I ended up in a school of 4 years and 4,000 people. But this also allowed me to learn the language, to be fluent in this, and I think it just opened a lot of doors that I'm not even conscious about today, right? Because when you learn a language like I do now, that I feel fluent, I even took my proficiency test. It's actually a lot of doors are open, and if I think about it consciously, I can go to the whole Americas and almost speak fluently in a native language everywhere, or you know, I became also lazier to learn the local languages because everyone knows English now. What? But yeah, that's pretty much my childhood. I think those are the things that really changed me. You know, you learn that the world is bigger, you learn that there's so much out there, and you learn actually what things do you take for granted in your culture and which ones aren't, which for me, even today, are some things that I'm starting to learn about.
So how old were you when you moved to America?
I was 16.
Wow, and then you came back to Mondragon University, did you?
So I had my last year in high school still, because I needed to come back. I wanted to stay again. Good news. I wanted to stay, and then I couldn't, because I was going to be treated as a foreigner if I came back in my SATs or whatever it is in the end of the school thing for college. So my parents said, well, you need to come back because we want you to be treated as a national. And I came back and I went to school normally. It was probably the toughest year of my life, but it also changed my life because I had an exchange student over, right? I was an exchange student. No, I had a one over. It's probably one of the people that I am closest with in my life, Chani. She lives in New Zealand now. She's American, but lives in New Zealand. So we don't see each other very often. But yeah, no, it's one of those women that I admire too.
Brilliant. Okay, talking of women then, it sounds like there's already been some brilliant women who've inspired you throughout your early life. So who were those key women in your childhood and in your early life who really supported you and encouraged you and made you who you are?
Yeah, so there were a lot. I think that when I think about it, there were a lot, because after we cheated, and we talked about this yesterday, and I cried, so brace yourselves, I'll cry again. For me, it was important to understand which people were key roles in my life, and I had teachers also that were key in my life, and then I realized that most of them were men, but then there were 2 or 3 that were very cool women. But I think one of the ones that I was first conscious about is my coach from Portugal. I said I'm a sailor. So Ines, that's a coach, that it was my coach when I was 14, 15, that first year. I was almost going to drop off the boat that I was going to sail on in Optimist, that it's a small boat, blah, blah, blah. And she said, like, no, you got 1 more year to go here, and that's what you're going to do. And you need to understand, I was at 15. I didn't understand the language. I ended up in a whole men's team. Like, I was the only woman in the team. Kid, actually, not woman. I was a kid in the team, and I really learned that she looked very mean and she yelled a lot, and I was like, oh my god, this woman is going to be super scary. But she's the reason why I learned to sail again. She's the reason I learned to think differently. I learned Portuguese, and she really encouraged us to reflect. She encouraged freedom from all of us. You need to understand that these are 15-year-olds sailing in very strong wind and a lot of waves, taking decisions on not killing themselves. And she is just taking care of 12, 15 people just from one boat. So if 2 go wrong, you need to choose. Like, there's no way you get the boat.
I think we actually have a photo of Ines, isn't it? I'm just going to share my screen so everyone can see a photo of Ines.
Oh, yeah, that's her. That's her. So I think so she was a person that I really liked. She really took me under her wing in a way, and she pushed me to places that I didn't know I had. I think she was very pushy. She was I got on 3rd place in nationals, a 3rd woman in nationals, which qualified me for European Championship. At the time, I couldn't go because I wasn't Portuguese. But I think that she enabled us to reflect. We have journals and journals full of reflections and make conscious decisions. So at the end of at the end of every race, she made us reflect on what we did, which meant that you couldn't take decisions that you wouldn't remember later. And for me, this is something that was very stupid at the time, but now I really think about it, like, is this decision something that you're just taking, or is this decision something that you will remember after, 4 hours or 5, in this case, like 6 months or whatever. And I found out later that I have journals and what went wrong, what went right, and stuff like that. Then another one that it's really clear for me, it's my mom. And I cried yesterday on this one. So that's her. That's me, my brother, and my dad. And for me, it's easy to say that my dad would be someone that it was very special because he's a co-op member, right? So he knows co-ops. He's someone that I have very good conversations with. He knows the model. He discusses business stuff from a very similar perspective than me in life in general, not only in the co-op movement. I think it's someone that sees my life from a very similar perspective than me. Now, my mom, it's opposite to what I see my life on. I think she's like, I don't understand her head, and is one of those people that I don't know if you've known any people that you say, like, I wish I was in your head for 2 days and understand what the hell is going on, because I have no idea how you thought of this. And this is my mom for me, I'm like, I don't know how you took the decision or you reached this conclusion, but that's totally not it. And I think this photo describes her very well. This is why I passed it over, because you see, she's not seeing the camera. She's just putting her hands out, like her hair is in her face, and she's just joyful of being. In this case, we were in Istanbul. We take a family holiday every year, and she's just happy to be there. And I think that's the way I want to approach life too. We had in my family, most of the men died earlier than the women. Well, in the Basque Country, men die an average of 6 years earlier than women. We have an average life expectancy of 86 if you're a woman. And so at some point there were only women in my family in the older generation. And my grandma and my great aunt were 2 very different characters throughout their lives. And my great aunt was incredibly happy. No regrets, just adventure. And when she lost her head, I'm not sure if it was Alzheimer because I was too young, but something, she was just happy, happy. Like everything was something to be grateful about. Maybe she knew who you were, or maybe she didn't, depends on the day, but she was just joyful that you were there and with her, and she just thanked people about whatever they were doing for her or not, like just thank people around. And I think that's my mom, she's happy. She dares to do stuff, and it doesn't let the assumptions of what a 60-something-year-old should be doing. She just does, and she swims in the ocean every day, regardless of the weather. In the Basque Country, this is not South Spain, this is North Spain, so more like England. And she just swims in the ocean, goes on kid parks, you know, and this is the kind of life that I want to live in a way.
So your great aunt, is that the one who had all the passports?
Oh yeah, my great aunt, yeah, she was she left her husband decided to become a yoga instructor when traveling around the world, and she died at 98, 94, still being a yoga instructor at 90. She had 7 passports full of stamps, and you're talking a woman that travels solo, you know, back at Mao, China, Nepal by bus, all the South America, Pinochet, Chile, you know, like, I want to be like that. And that's me in Pamplona. Yeah. This is, my mom is from Pamplona, and this one is actually a photo that I recovered back from my grandma's home when we took everything out when she died, and this is one of my favorite actually. Yeah, I haven't changed that much, have I? Someone said, someone from the co-op movement actually, that I've been teaching platform co-ops for a year and a half now, and Stephanie from Canada left like, do you realize that you do the same faces now, right? I'm like, wait, I'm teaching and I do these faces, like, this is wrong. But yeah, so that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing those, Anna. They're lovely. Still talking about women then, who else in the cult movement, who are other women who've really inspired you, or did you turn to?
So after we talked yesterday, I started thinking of women that inspire me, and I'm going to mention 2 from my company. I normally mention only 1, but I realized this last couple of months that I really admire someone else too. First is Lorea, that she was not a member of our co-op when we started. She just became a member, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. She's an engineer, but she used to study physics, and she started studying physics because she wanted to create clarinets because she was a musician. So she realized that if she studied physics, she could make all the clarinets, right? Very normal logic in your life. But after 4 years, so that is when the physics finishes, you know, after 4 years. But she dropped off at the beginning of the 4th year because she learned resistance, and she said, okay, so now I can make a toaster. And the teacher said, like, no toaster for you, just learn for the exam. And she said, like, wait, so what? This makes no sense. So she left, you know, after 2 semesters to go, just left physics. So after that, she was just working in something else and learning so fast, and she's probably the fastest learning person I know. She ended up doing telecommunications engineering, which is very rare for women. And then she studied big data and the teaching master and something else. And then she, at the same time, she was a DJ. That's how she paid for studies for 7 years. And now she dropped it off to find some other crew, and she keeps learning, reading. I don't know if she sleeps, you know, I've never seen her sleep. But I can tell you that she's one of the fastest learners and thinkers I know. I mean, again, this is one of the people that I want to be in the head of, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I dare, you know, because, you know, which speed is that? I don't know if I can handle that. And then back to normal. And then Miren, that it's someone that I clash a lot with because she's very different than me, but she's been in the governing council for a couple of years now. And very quietly, she's transformed the organization to tidiness. You'll learn later when I talk to you about Traveling University what chaos means for learning, but how great it is. But again, if you want to have a company that is very, like, you know, it grows, because at the beginning we were 7, but we're now 36. You really, in 6 different countries, we actually want to know what's going on. And Miren, in the last couple of years, she's like very quietly, super working ethic, huge courage and determination. She has just transformed the organization from the shade, you know, and you know, being in the shadow all this time and just making these little works that are difficult to do, and handling people well, and you know, working in the shadow, it's very fantastic what she's accomplished. So I'm very grateful to both of them. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the other person you mentioned yesterday was Yeva as well.
Yeah, I mean, Yeva, some of you, and if you're from the UK, you may know her, like from Lake House, and she has her own film co-op, and she's one of the reasons. I mean, I will talk to her about her later, because she's one of the reasons why I joined I stayed in the co-op movement worldwide, right? She's another stage of person. She just believes in what she does. She challenges all the time what's going on. She doesn't allow people to tell her what to do without really challenging their, if it's necessary to challenge their decisions and why things happen. And she's been very inspiring for me. I mean, she's one of those people that I actually talk to when when I need to take decisions on the co-op movement. It's like Sebastian, obviously, because he's the closest I have, but also Yeva, you know, and also life decisions. And I missed their wedding on the 29th. Because coronavirus.
Okay, so you grew up in the Basque Country in Spain. Yeah. So who their influence on you? Well, what about growing up in that kind of environment? How did that affect you?
I mean, we live in a very weird environment here, right? Because I don't know how much you knew, but when I was a kid, there was a terrorist band, ETA, right? And this is something that for me, you know, it was a normal life. You know, there were containers being fired here in right next to my house, explosions, attacks. But this creates a lot of struggle on the political side, obviously, but also in the social side. And it's kind of under the radar when you're a kid. When you become a teenager, it just starts to, you know, unfold, because you make decisions of who are your friends and which school you go to, and which bars do you go to, and which street do you go to, and then you're just taking. Now I'm thinking while I speak, so pardon me, but it's just like it really very early in your life, it just shapes who you're gonna become and the social circle that you're gonna join, just because which bars or which people or which schools you go to, right? And in the Basque Country it's just extra special, and especially in my region, you know, San Sebastian, that it's the capital of Guipúzcoa, that it's probably the most conflictive area. Being in the capital, it is not as extremist, but there are like the spaces for each people, and for me it's interesting because I went to a Catholic school that was bilingual. This is why I speak Basque, and you know, it was very neutral. No one really talked politics, but that also made me in a way, because I may have been a lot more politically active or you know, different if I would have gone to another school or you know, in different ways. And the fact that I lived three years abroad in key teenage years in my life, and I lost a lot of what was going on, right? When I was 14 to 16 or to 14 to 17, I left the country. So it's interesting to see that cocktail. And I think that, but for me, I was never afraid, you know, and then we had people, because I sailed, so I went to nationals, and it always was the Basques and the Catalans together. No, big surprise. People from Cantabria or Madrid weren't as close, or the Canary Islands, they were with us because they are farther away, you know. And these kind of things happened, and people become, and you become aware that there are going to be people that will never come to Basque Country, just in case it's like what we see from Baghdad. And I'm like, dude, we're normal people here, you know, we go to school, we don't carry guns, there's no explosions on a daily basis, and life is good, nothing happens, and we are a very rich area, actually the richest in Spain, and we're very industrial, but then you learn that, you know, everything had happened, and I think that, and for me was interesting that the more the farther away I went, the more Basque I felt, which normally just the other way around, right? Or they tell you that it's the other way around. When you go abroad, you forget about boundaries, and you see that humans are humans, and it's true. But then you realize that there's so many little things that make you a local at where you're from, and so many little differences that differentiate you from other Spanish people. And in a way, it was interesting. And I keep realizing that now. Yeah.
And obviously Mondragon, I mean, you've already mentioned, is a huge part of the like identity of the Basque Country. And so you went to Mondragon University, and Tazebaez grew out of that. So can you talk us through that? Because that's a brilliant story. I love it.
So I wasn't as fluent in Basque by the time, because after 3 years of living, and then my parents didn't speak it that much, and so as I went to Mondragon, which is super Basque. And yeah, you learned in Basque, right? And I was like, what the hell did I do? But turns out I went to a very international course. It was the first generation of what is now very normal, that it's a lane, that it's leadership, entrepreneurship, and innovation degree. That it's a degree that came from Finland, and we were the first generation ever. And turns out you learn entrepreneurship by doing. That means, for me, they came to my school and told us, you're going to have a trip every year and you're going to go abroad for at least a month or 2. And I thought that was fantastic. I had never thought about being an entrepreneur, forget about learning business. I wanted to be a boat captain. You know, I'm a transatlantic boat captain. I studied physics my whole life. My teacher said, you know, you suck at physics, you don't understand anything, maybe do something else. And I thought about it, and then they came and told me, you know, traveling, and I'm like, oh, look at that, that's my place. English, I speak English, fantastic, that's great, that's all you need to know. Turns out entrepreneurship, and I said like, okay, well, entrepreneurship wasn't as hypey as now, so I was like, okay, the entrepreneurship, and they said, well, in the first month, this is a Finnish education. So first couple months, we're going to divide you in 2 teams, that are your teams for the rest of the 4 years, okay? And then you're gonna create a company. I'm like, what? Yeah, and you manage it for 4 years, and then if everything goes right, you pass. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. You know, these people I would have chosen for my life. Half the people in my company I would have spoken to, because they were, what I said before, you know, super Basque, or, you know, people that are not in your social status. Is a private university, so everyone is more or less the same, but you know, I was like, no, I don't like these people. Why am I going to manage 4 years of? Turns out those are the people that I ended up creating the co-op afterwards with, right? So my first learning was that, one, I proficient my Basque, so I'm now fully fluent, and I can, you know, defend projects in the government in Basque, which is I'm very proud of. I don't really write well, but I speak very well. And then those people that are the most different to what you are probably the people that you're going to work with better with, right? And so it was very cool to see our barriers come down throughout 4 years, and learn that we were the best people to work together. So it was 14 of us when we started, and then at the very end in 2013, 9 of us decided to keep on with the company. And we regenerated Tazebaez, which at the beginning was an association, into a co-op. Tazebaez itself means "and why not," right? It's Basque. So the name was already something for us. It was challenging itself. It just made us realize that why not was going to be an answer to most of our questions. And good or bad, this keeps happening. Thank God, Miden again for, you know, putting our feet in the earth when necessary.
And what does Tazebaez do?
So Tazebaez is it's an innovation group, because we have more than one company now inside of Tazebaez, which now becomes a group. Some of them co-ops, some of them non-co-ops, but Tazebaez, it's a worker-owned cooperative. And for me, that's very important, and I will talk later about it, but it's a worker-owned cooperative. That means that most of us are members, right? And it's an innovation company that does mostly consultancy on innovation, consultancy on people. So when people normally think consultancy and they say, oh, technology, and we don't do that. Technology is for someone else. We do a lot of content, a lot of what it will be considered HR in a way, or development or company culture and transformation of companies and stuff. And then we have a communication agency inside that's called Make It Visual. That do a lot of motion graphics and design for documents, for videos, for a lot of things, and they do graphic recording as well. So it's very cool to see them draw. They're very good drawers. And yeah, and then we have other companies that do other things. And then there's traveling university. So traveling university, it's an interesting concept, right? I mean, you were going to ask, go ahead.
I was just going to say, tell us more about the traveling university because
Yeah,
it is a fantastic thing.
I really like this slogan because it's better than traveling and more than a university. So it's a university that really does what we used to do in Lane, right? And it's hand by hand with Mondragon, because it is official. It's an official degree on entrepreneurship, leadership, and innovation. But we challenged Mondragon back in the time, and Mondragon let us challenge them to say, if you really want to have global mind citizens and you really want to create change globally, you may as well start creating international teams and not having a home base, but actually creating an itinerant degree. So for the first time, we have nowadays, it's been 6 years now, five years, and September is going to be the 6th. We have 19 nationalities. And it's an itinerant degree, which means the students create their own companies, but they don't have a home. So they go all around the world, all around the time for 4 years, generating their company and learning about different realities in the world. And I think this is super interesting because the people that are in the teams are also international. That means English is the base learning, but you also realize which parts of the English are culture-based and which people-based, which is interesting. You create culture codes that are only for the teams because people come from all over the place and they assume that parts of their reality are normal for others, but none are. Let me tell you, misunderstandings happen all the time because people, speak English normally as a second language, and then what happens with second languages? It's fantastic. And we have home bases in Berlin, in Korea, in Seoul, in China, in Shanghai, and we used to have the US, but now it's Costa Rica because visas and COVID. So what we do is we take the people around and allow them to experience reality, and we do it for more than 6 months at a time. So it's not just a touristy trip. It's something that you need to learn to live. You need to learn the reality of people, and then you need to really make business where you're staying. And the outcome is, for me, the outcome is that people are much more aware of what surroundings are. People come from very different backgrounds, so we give scholarships to a lot of people. And the idea is that at the end, they learn much more than just the business part. They become so aware of what their activity produces in the world, what's the impact on other people, what's the reality of other places and also of other people, because they may be people from the Basque Country that are here, and then there's a girl from India and a girl from Kenya and some US people and some Koreans, and they come all together in a bunch of it's like a social experience, really. It becomes real, and at the end of the day they are working businesses, so this is not a joke. They work and they need to make money from the very first day, and this is very Mondragoni in a way, right? So we use co-ops, we understand the concept of co-ops, we understand the values of co-ops, we understand co-ops are a tool for socio-economic development, and I think this is a very important and something that is very invested in the Mondragon philosophy. It's like, it's great, and Arif Mendiarrieta may be one of those key figures. He's not a woman, but he may good at will. But no, he's a priest, so be careful what we say. This is being recorded. So he's a priest, and he said, like, this is great, and this is great that we have the values in place, and this is great that we're doing reinvestment in community, but at the end of the day, make sure that businesses that are well run with excellency, and we are tough on our directors as well, because at the end of the day, unless we generate wealth, there's not going to be wealth to be shared. So this is very important, I think, in the philosophy of Mondragon, understanding that it's a socio-economic reality supported by education and supported for so much more. But at the end of the day, we're talking business.
It's really interesting what you're saying before about how a lot of the students end up creating companies and organizations that are very value-led, that have value for the world. How many of the organizations set up at the end are co-ops? Are any of them?
So I think there's one or two that are co-ops. At the beginning in the university, they can't make them co-ops because it's too expensive under the Basque law. We have a very demanding cooperative law. Eventually it'll change. But a lot of them, most of them are socially responsible. So that means that they have all of them work with the structure of a co-op. So we ensure that during the 4 years, democracy is present, transparency is present, participation is present. So all of that is structured inside whatever form they decide to make. Normally it's an association because it's the best way to make it. And also the easiest to take abroad because traveling university. And then from those that leave, most of them are small businesses. Not many have graduated, so 1 or 2 right now. But all of them remain socially oriented. So for us, and traveling university ensures that they experience Mondragon in the very first year they start. So we all do a visit to Mondragon and have a discussion and critical thinking about it. And we make them understand the reality of what's going on here. And then when they go to China or to Korea, they visit the companies of Mondragon. And then we, for example, last year in Costa Rica, they've been in the Cooperative University in Tazebaez, and we make sure that they're close to cooperative realities as well.
Well, thanks, Anna.
And if someone wants to enroll, enrollment is open. So you have nieces, nephews. I'm kidding. Actually,
you're not kidding. It's a great idea. We'll share the link in the chat later, so I'll make sure that's there. We'll put it on the YouTube video as well.
Radar up if you know some crazy person that may as well learn about. I mean, there are special people, so not everyone it's a fit in traveling university. You need to be just crazy enough to do it, and your parents need to want to let you go for 4 years.
Special kind of crazy. It's fine.
Never. Yeah. Just kidding.
So, and I think so. I first met you through the International Cooperative Alliance, and I think a lot of people will know you through your role there. So, you're vice president for Europe, you're youth rep for the ICA. How on earth did you get involved in that? What's the journey from there, from Tazebaez up to vice president?
Yeah, so as I shared, we really believe in the model, right? So we are not only a workspace, we're very much an activist in the COP movement. I mean, that's how I feel. I don't work in Tazebaez just for the job. I work in Tazebaez because it represents a reality that I think we can create together, and that it can show that young people with an ideal, with an example that is good and well structured yet socially responsible, can succeed in life. And I think we're just showing that. One of my colleagues, it's hesitant to use the word alternative, but we are living a reality that is parallel, and it just works that way, and we are part of the reality, really, and hopefully we'll take more and more part of the mainstream business talk in the short future. But our joining to the ICA youth or to General Assembly in general, was very coincidental. It was just I didn't know what I was getting into. We got a call from someone in the UK that knew someone who had been working at UWI in Bristol for a while, and then someone called me that was a friend of a friend that knew a friend, and blah blah blah, and then finally I ended up in Paris, where 16 countries, people from 16 different countries gathered up to talk about the generation of a network for youth in Europe, and we did. So that happened, and I think that most of the real thing of why I became that is because, one, I wanted to travel. Remember that I joined Lane because I wanted to travel, not because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and because I really believed in the model, and because I saw young people that believed in the model as well. So I think, like always, and like Tazebaez, the key were who was there then, right? So it was a clique of people that were there at the right moment, and suddenly it was just meaningful for all of us. And Tazebaez believed in it, right? Because I came back home and I said, wow, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly people believed me, without proof. And that since that, it's been 6 years now. The Young European Cooperators Network became the youth network of COPS Europe in 2017. And that's how I ended up at the ICA. And the ICA was something that I didn't know existed. when I was, and I told them yesterday, both Rebecca and Sarah, that back in the day, I thought that all the cooperatives were worker-owned. And that was a reality, because why would it not be a worker-owned? Why would someone work at a cooperative if they weren't members? I don't get it. I still don't get it so well. But for me, it's just like any other job, right? If you're not a member, it's like having any other job. And yes, your company is ethical, but not necessarily, because I know a lot of co-ops that aren't as ethical as they should be in so many cases. And I know companies that are more cooperative than some co-ops. So in a way, it wasn't just grounded in why people work there. And for me, it was key to understand that the real utopia of co-ops for me, and with Aritmenia Rieta also as someone to follow, is that the people that are the workers and that are going to suffer or live with the decisions that the company takes are the people that take them. So it's the same people, right? So you are putting in the balance always the decision that you want to take and the fact that you're going to live with it. So, it's a great debate even inside of the people that are taking decisions. And for me, this is crucial. And that's why I joined, because there were so many of others like me in that group that were cooperative members of their own co-op, or creating their own co-op, or learning and living through that ideal. And then I got more and more involved in the structure, to the extent that now both know that I'm running for the youth presidency whenever the elections happen at the global level. Because Sebastian asked me, not because it was my idea, because I would have never thought of that idea. And for me, it was interesting because when I was younger, as a co-op founder, for me was like, what's this structure for? Like, these people, what do? They don't, my question was, they don't do anything. The only people that work are the workers, and the structure is there. And now the more into it I am, the more I understand. And the more I also think that, we have chances to make it better. And this is why I'm here still, I advocate for youth. Obviously, there's a gender committee, and as a young woman, I just click both boxes in a way. But I think there's agendas that should show that that we are a great socioeconomic experiment, and not an alternative, but a reality that is happening, and that it's almost a country of its own, right? We could show the world that the ICA is just that kind of leader that will lead with example when it comes to injustice and equality and accessibility and all those things that we dream about as the humanity, I think, and that we can put our problems aside and our personal egos aside for the good of the movement. And I think we are in an incredible place to do that, and that we have all the chances. We're diverse, we're different. And then suddenly sometimes we get stuck in the same things that we in a way criticize, right? And me advocating for youth, I always say it, right? Everyone talks about youth. Everyone talks about youth and how relevant it is and how much do we need to invest on it. And then my question always is, what do we do about it? And as an organization, I wish there was more that we did about it, right? And that we could hold ourselves accountable for our speech and walk our talk, like the Americans say, and show the world that if we really want youth to take the lead on a lot of things, we need to let them, not only tell them to do it, because that's a challenge. When you want others to lead, you need to stop leading yourself, and that's really. And I was sharing with Rebecca and with Sarah yesterday that I think there is a space for younger youth than me. I'm 30. I'm not that young anymore. I used to be the youngest in all the conferences, and now there are younger people. But I wish there were younger, and that they were also involved and almost mandatorily involved in decision-making processes. So I called in an EU commissioning co-op speech that we had. I called for a think tank of 15 to 25s, because I think that we need policy that it's for 15 to 25s, made by 15 to 25s, or at least feedbacked by this kind of constituency, and I think the co-op movement won't grow until we have those people in younger. Because I was joking with some people in the Basque region a couple months ago when we had a General Assembly of CONFECOP, and then they said, I was joking COVID jokes, like, oh, okay, so can we say that the Basque cooperative movement is grouply immune because, you know, all the 65 pluses are vaccinated, and I think there's 4 that are not. That means all of you are old. And they were.
Can I just ask you a quick question as well? And thanks, Helen, because I've just seen that lovely note that she sent to you, Anna. But just a quick question about young women in the co-op movement, and what do you think the opportunities and challenges are for young women in terms of participation in co-ops, in, you know, participation at the level that you're at? Is it a challenge? Is it easier? You know, what do you think about that?
I think if you look at the youth committee, we're 50-50. So I'm pretty proud of that. We're 50-50. We're 4 representatives are women and 4 representatives are men. Funny enough, the Americas have 2 women and Asia Pacific has 2 men. But we're still 50-50. And the 2 VPs from Africa and Europe are women. So the 2 elected people by the committee, by the region, are women, both me and Hilda. So I think that shows that when you let people, the young people elect, there is that, you know, that balance, that it exists. And now if we elect a woman president in the next round, we may have 5-4, you know, maybe for the first time. So I think it's interesting, and the possibilities are there, you know. But there are another things that is how many of us are ready to put our faces out there. And I think this is a legacy that your generation, not the older generation, but your generation leaves, right? I think we need to show women that it's okay to speak, and that it's okay to take credit for what we do, and that it's okay to be in the spotlight, and that it's not a threat to be powerful in a way. But because I think that's what the social world, maybe not consciously but unconsciously, shows women is, don't be threatening, you know, it's bad, you won't find a husband. I know it's a joke, but not so much. And you know, so girls and women aren't as ready to take on the spotlight and, you know, claim credit for what they do, and you know, we become nice and we become polite, and I think that in a way that's why I'm single. I am. And I think that it's why there's not so many women ready to talk and ready to challenge what's going on. And for me, you know, the next question is about role models, so I'm gonna go ahead and answer that. And I think role models matter. And I think that's why I'm here, and that's what I told both of you. I have a lot of questions for what's going to happen in the next 4 years for the Youth Network. I have a lot of questions whether I'm going to be elected or not, and this is why I'm running, you know, because I think that it's worth trying. And if I don't win, which I hope I do, I think it's just good enough to show people that it's okay to talk in these kind of forums, to, you know, show that women are articulated. We create our own co-op as well. So I know the struggles. I'm grounded in a way that I will become, if I become part of the structure, I will not leave my co-op, which is important to know, because their youth role, or I don't think most of the roles as representatives in the ICA, none of them are paid, they're all voluntary. So for us, it would be an effort that Tazebaez decides to support me with. And in a way, it's just okay to, you know, to show other people that it's, as young people, we can, one, have a seat at the table, and as women, we can, you know, talk and be heard and talk well. And I think that's, there's a space. And I know the co-op movement and also society is changing, and it's allowing a lot of things that even may be difficult to do. But for that, we need to lead with example, and we just can't talk about it. I think we need to show example and you know, courage of just doing what we claim, and then when doors are open, being brave enough to take them. Because I think that sometimes it's like, you know, we want to sit at the table. Okay, here's the seat. Do you want to take it? No. Oh, so what happened? You know, another man takes it over, and then what? And I think that's a mistake.
Anna, what would your message be to young women, to middle-aged women, to older women, to all the women? What's your message?
This is super hard always, because it's just because what do I know, right? I mean, around all these women that you are here, probably the least experience or something that, you know, but I will share what I learned. And it's something that I told Rebecca and Sarah. I turned 30 this year. And in a way, something clicked. I didn't have a crisis, which I'm very happy about, but something clicked, you know. And it was, I decided that I was gonna draw lines. I'm old enough to draw lines. I'm old enough to say no to things. I'm old enough to not smile all the time nice and pretty. I'm old enough to just claim my space and say like, no, or this is not how it's gonna work. And I also generated this style that I wanted to show for my way of being. I'm very outgoing. I think I am fairly articulated in most of the languages I speak, and that I speak with and when I'm in co-op spaces, I speak with a strength that I get from having been an entrepreneur in a co-op, right? So when I speak about my experiences, I know that I'm not talking of someone else or a research I made. I'm talking about what I lived. And for me, this is super important because it just shows that it's a path I walked and conclusions I got from my own experience. And this allows me to share at least what I learned. So pick your battles was one of them. You won't fight all. You'll have women around you and men around you that will help you fight some, but you need to know which ones and draw your lines. And I think be tough. And yesterday I said, like, be a bitch, you know, sometimes it's okay. You know, a bit bitchy, like it's okay. And sometimes it gains you a respect that being nice doesn't. And I learned this recently, like sometimes you're just, and I was like, really, do I need to be mean for is this okay? Like lesson learned, check. Okay, now I'm gonna be bitch all the time. That's not gonna work. But that's something that people should know about, that sometimes that respect that you don't win by being super nice, you win by being very mean. And but you need to learn who and when, and don't make it be a bluff that I told yesterday. It's like, it needs to be something that you're really standing for and that you are ready to not back down on. Like if you put your foot down, it's your foot down and it's not moving, and that's it. So you need to learn very well on where do you put it down, because I think it's mandatory that you keep it that way. And so, for example, now that I'm running, and I think I got the courage from being asked to run for president rather than deciding to run. And the answer was because of your energy and other people that I wasn't expect supported that speech. And I said, like, so maybe I'll just put myself out there until someone says you're out, and then I'll know that I did a good job. So in that sense, it's okay, you know, and that's something I learned. And then I always remember a sentence from my dad that was when I left to the US. It was because I was escaping from coming back. Remember at the beginning of the story how I say I left because I didn't want to be in Spain. And this is something that I found was a pattern for a while in my life. You know, I chose to do something to escape from something else, and I think it's wrong. So you need to choose something because you chose that, not because it's avoiding something that you don't want to take. And I think this is a major lesson. It's like, what is it that is pushing you forward that direction? Is it the direction you want to go to because you have something that it's in the other side that you want to reach? Or is it because you just want to avoid that other trail that looks like it's trouble? Like maybe face it, you know, or at least close the door and learn to make decisions, because I suck at decisions. And then don't look back and think what you missed because you take that decision, you know, because you know, I wanted to be an Olympian. What if I would have stayed in Portugal and keep sailing? Maybe I would have been an Olympian in Tokyo, but maybe not. And now I'm a co-op member. Well done, you know, check. So things like that, don't keep overthinking. I think those are good, and it's okay if you do. And I think that if you don't succeed at those things, it's okay. Don't push yourself, like don't punish yourself for not, keeping up with all the decisions and, you know, like calling back that guy that you said you wouldn't call, or thinking over that thing that you said you didn't go to the gym today. I did. But, you know, don't punish yourself because of the decisions you took didn't succeed as fast or as easy as you expected.
That's really wise words, Anna. Thank you for sharing them. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. So before if you've got any questions in the chat, do put them in there. There's a couple of comments we'll read out in a second. But before we do, Anna, last question we ask all of our guests. If you're stranded on a desert island, what three things would you take to sustain you?
Oh yeah, we talked about this yesterday, and she mentioned, I didn't even think about it. It's like a boat. You can sail out. Yes, I would do that. I would take a boat. But because I enjoy sailing, not because I wanted to go back. You know, if I were in a desert island, maybe I didn't go back, and you never heard of me again. But I would have taken probably a notebook to think, and a Swiss knife, I said, and probably something similar to a blanket because I'm very white and I get sunburned super easy. So stick it somewhere. Make sure.
Very practical. No, I like it. I
very practical. Very practical. I realized that yesterday when I said it, it's like, come on, really, girl? Like, this is all your philosophy? You could take, I don't know, a flying carpet, or, you know, philosophical stuff. Don't necessarily need to be real, because real was not in the question. No, I fell miserably to not be realistic.
Oh no, it's brilliant. Thank you so much, Anna. So in the chat, here it says we're waiting for you to be president. So we're all waiting on that, Anna. Bernadette Turner says St. Pauline Green would be so proud of you and would fully support your election, as I would. Pauline was always pushing for the youth movement to have more say in the global and regional offices. Good luck, Anna. You would have my vote if I wasn't a golden oldie. There you go. Oh, thanks, Bernadette. Message from Helen.
I love that your camera is on, because I saw all your faces and I was like, oh my God, this is successful chat.
Oh. And there was a lovely message from Helen before she left saying, I think Anna is more like her mum than she thinks. She speaks with such joy. Good luck with the election, Anna.
Thank you so much.
Very, very, very sweet. Very lovely. Are there any other questions then before we end the session? If anyone wants to put any in, please do. So I guess like one final one from me, just we're waiting, would be, you know, in your view, why is the co-ops model so important for women and for young people and for young women? What is it about the co-op model that makes the difference to these people?
I'm gonna, you know, just scratch the youth and women part. I think the co-op movement is relevant, full point, full stop. That's it. I think it is, and that's it, you know, and I'm learning more and more about it. And sometimes I say, like, maybe I'm super idealistic and maybe I think that people are nicer than they are and things like that. But I realize that there's always nice people. There's always nice people trying, and that there is always people that want to do it for the social good. And you know what I realized is that for a couple of years now, we sacrificed our life to generate a co-op that is now 36 people big, right? But you know, there is a spot in the career that it's like, now it's time to have a life that it's good, you know, that you generated something, you're employing or you're not employing. There are members of the co-op, people that you know, one time you didn't even dream that this was going to happen. And I always say this sentence that two of the founders of Mondragon told to each other. It's when the first co-op started running, one of them said to each other, do you imagine that when we retired, the company is running full speed? And but at the time, full speed was 60 people. When they retired, there was 80,000 people worldwide, you know, and you know, so it's just wild how good speaks to people. And I think we're in a moment that I'm obviously I'm going to say more than ever because I'm young and this is what I need to think. The more than ever, we are in the verge of changing, right? We have the possibility of changing. We have a generation that is far more prepared to create social change and radical changes than my generation. I mean, Generation Z is much better at accountability than we are as millennials. I think they come from a perspective that they're going to invest so much in community impact. They're going to be critical about what's going on. And one part is going to be just to make sure that there is a generation break. And the other one is because they really believe that they want to live in the world that is good for people, and I think this is real. And so for me, it's very frustrating when people say young people, they are so not accountable, they don't work and they're lazy. And I'm like, that's not true. Everyone said that about the younger people. Your parents said that about yourselves, and now you're saying that about your kids. Come on. So I think that, we're prepared, we're ready, things are happening. The co-op movement is a reality. We're transforming it. And I think that this transformation toward a more digital reality for the co-op movement as well, and a global movement as well, and the connection among others that we're having, like with people like Hira that I see on a weekly basis now, it just shows that we have the capacity now to create change in a mainstream level. It's not in the sidelines anymore. Patagonia was publishing about a co-op not so far ago, and I was so happy. I was like, a co-op, featured in a major Instagram account that people are going to follow worldwide. This is fantastic. This is a first. And I think Mondragon was in the New York Times, and things like that. It's going to be like, we're going to show that this is a possibility, and it's not an alternative. It's just a way of living if you want it. And it's not willing to, take out capitalism. It's just, do you want to join this movement? Fantastic. If you don't, it's okay too. We don't want to, you don't want to capture everyone and just share that the world is bad. We just want to show that there is another way. And if you believe in that way, then it's a space for you. So for youth, and I think our main responsibility is sharing it with people that don't know it. And I always say this when I speak, it's like, when we are among cooperative members, people tend to talk about co-ops with such pride. What happens when we get out of those comfort zones? And that's where you really need to be encouraged to talk, because we already know that women have power. We already know that co-ops are meaningful. We already know that youth, it's a constituency we're looking and supporting. What happens with those that don't see it as obvious, which is obvious for us, but at the end of the day, it's like, what happens with the rest of the world that may not see it, but not because they don't believe on it, it's just because they never knew. So for me, that young people know that co-ops exist and it's a worth model, and it's not non-for-profit, it's for profit as well, which means that you can live well, you can be wealthy, maybe not super wealthy, but wealthy, and you are also going to invest in the community. All these things, if you're going to create your own co-op. So people should be taught, or at least, taken out of the non-knowledge, that there is a model that is sustainable for you and sustainable for the world. And I think that a lot of people will choose it if they knew.
Ana, thank you very much.